Sure.
3, 2, 1. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Mind Split Cafe. And as you can tell, we're Matless today, but he will be back for next episode. Today we have an interesting one, um, and the words can't explain how relevant this company is. So I'm going to let Cliff, the Chief Growth Officer of Recovery.com, take it away from here, give us a little explanation of what they do, how they do it, and we'll get started.
Hey, Chris, thanks so much. Really excited to be here and grateful for the opportunity. You are correct. I am the Chief Growth Officer for Recovery.com. Our brand awareness has increased tremendously in a short amount of time, but I'm sure there's some listeners that don't know who we are. So, our mission is to be the best place in the world for people to find, strengthen, maintain, and share their recovery. And in our world, Chris, when we talk about recovery, that's for all behavioral health care disorders. So that could be substance use disorder with any substance, alcohol, cocaine, opiates, cannabis. Could be eating disorders,
Oh,
gambling disorders, sex addiction, pornography, and also primary mental health, depression and
that is
anxiety,
awesome.
co-occurring disorders. Yeah, and we get about 250,000 visitors per month.
Wow.
Historically, care navigation has been a tremendous challenge, and even in general healthcare, right? Figuring
Yeah.
out, where do I go to have my knee looked at, right? And can I get an appointment with a specialist scheduled in a timely fashion? In behavioral healthcare, it's even more confusing and more challenging. We think that part of that is due to the stigma that people historically have not been very comfortable raising their hand publicly and acknowledging that they're struggling with their mental health. So,
Yeah,
what people do, Chris, is they turn to the internet and they enter
absolutely.
keyword search terms. Oftentimes, that's the first step they take in trying to get help. So, we absolutely are a mission based organization. And Chris, I myself am someone in long term recovery as well. So this is
Nice.
near and dear to my heart, and I'm so blessed to be able to do this work.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super stoked that I got to see recovery.com and actually see what's going on behind the scenes, because not behind the scenes, but how it's working, because this is absolutely needed. I mean, I know, and I got a little, you got a little vulnerable, so I will as well. I went to treatment myself, and I want to say it took me like 2.5 weeks to find a treatment center, just because of how hard it is, how many there are, but how many that are not decent, that have bad reviews. Like, it was just, excuse me, but hell trying to figure out where I was going to go. So having recovery.com back then would have been phenomenal.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that story. I really appreciate it. And unfortunately, that's a story we hear over and
Uh,
over and
I bet.
over again. And we're dealing with life or death a lot. And these things are progressive. They don't get better on their own. They get worse if we don't get treatment. Um, so the wrong match, unfortunately, is something that still occurs regularly, and that can happen for a number of different reasons. Um, we are all multifaceted, right? And it's never just one thing. So what we try to do on the platform, Chris, is make sure that the person identifies as many conditions, characteristics as possible. And the best providers are really specialized. So there are treatment centers that specialize in adolescent cannabis use disorder, with a co-occurring anxiety disorder, and maybe even there's an addiction issue with screen time, right? And that's wonderful because the more folks that they treat with those characteristics, the
Yeah.
better they get at treating those types of people.
Yeah,
So that's
absolutely.
really what the platform does is it makes the correct match between the patient and the provider.
So it's like a Tinder for mental health. You put all your information in, you what you need, what you have, and the platform literally tailors the list to you and what you need, right?
Yeah, there's lots of search criteria. So you can enter a lot of information and then the matches will be whittled down and hopefully providing the best matchup exactly, which
Uh,
increases, right, the likelihood of a positive outcome.
yeah,
We don't have a
absolutely.
lot of good outcomes data in this industry, but we do know when there is a better match that the outcomes are going to be better.
Yeah, absolutely. And now that you said that, I kind of wanted to throw some statistics out there for some of the listeners, and we can go ahead, backdoor it, and explain how recovery.com helps this. I think that would be a cool little test, not test, but cool little, for lack of better words, test. So 20.3 million Americans aged 12 or older have a substance use disorder. Now, 40% of those individuals, these are all just substance use, so we'll stick on that side for right now. 40% of the individuals in recovery will experience a relapse. And then let's go down to here. 40% of adults who needed substance use care did not receive it. 30% of the ones that did receive it expressed trouble finding the right match.
Yeah, there's lots of different data out there and lots of different statistics. But Chris, it's all of them are consistent with what you share.
Yeah.
Tens of millions of people currently struggling, in this country alone, tens of millions of people in active recovery, which is wonderful.
Yes, sir.
Relapse is something that happens. A lot of experts say it's part of the recovery. It's part of the disease. It's rare that someone gets it the first time they try.
Yeah, I don't
Um,
know if I've met a one chip wonder, and those
yeah,
those are
right.
far and few between.
Yeah,
But
they sure are. Yeah, absolutely. So, um, yeah, in the data, it could be, really disheartening. We're sick, right? And we've been sick for a long time. A lot of professionals, experts will suggest that we've become sicker. I think the pandemic certainly contributed to that. I think a lot of digital living, lack of real engagement with other humans, all these things are contributing to kind of a dangerous cocktail, for lack of a better term.
oh,
Um,
100%.
and we really are in a leadership position right now. There's been a lot of other efforts made to try and build an extremely comprehensive online marketplace. A lot of times these types of sites or businesses are referred to as directories. We're different. We're different in our scale. We're different in our speed. We're different in the amount of traffic that we get. And we also take tremendous pride in being objective and independent and ethical. What we really want to do is just create a very, very comprehensive marketplace. We're patient centric. So we are thinking of the humans and trying to help the humans, and it's working. And we're really excited about the work that we're doing.
Yeah, I can, in just the amount of time that I've been following recovery.com and seeing recovery.com, I have just seen so many more people start to talk about it. And I don't know, that might be like an algorithm or something, not saying that you guys weren't being talked about before, but now that I've been in contact with recovery.com, I see people talking about it all the time. I see, the other day, I think you shared a very insightful post, and a lot of people came to it and started talking about it via recovery.com. So you guys are absolutely doing something right.
Well,
Um,
thank you, Chris. I appreciate that, and that's really encouraging. Your anecdotal feedback that there, I really appreciate that, and it's music to my ears. Keep in mind too that our brand is new.
yeah,
So,
that's what I was trying to say. Like, it's
yeah,
just massive for being so infant.
right, right. So our company was formed in 2017. So our predecessor company was called Rehab Path.
Yeah.
And in December of last year, we made a very strategic decision to purchase the domain recovery.com, which was not inexpensive. The reason why we did that, there were a few reasons, but Chris, the continuum of care in behavioral health care is long and why,
Yes.
right? There's lots of different ways that people can get treatment. If someone is really, really sick and they're struggling to be functioning in their day-to-day life, and they're using, right, in a pretty significant manner, and they've been doing that for a long time, they probably require residential care,
Yeah,
which, as you know,
absolutely.
means we go live somewhere for 30 days or 60 days or 90 days, right? And that is an acute level of care. But there's also a lot of other options, though. You could do partial hospitalization, PHP. You could do IOP, which is intensive outpatient. You could do outpatient. You could do just regular counseling. And Chris, as you know, a lot of people get sober just by going to meetings.
Yeah.
So that is the continuum of care. We serve the continuum of care, and being called rehab path was kind of misleading, right? So
Yeah.
you could think, okay, maybe this company can help me just to find that level of care. And that's incorrect. The other thing is, and we learned from doing some real market research, most people do not respond positively to the term rehab, right?
Yeah,
That,
it's
that's
kind of
not
like a,
something that people get excited about. Like, oh, great, I get to go
yeah,
to
it's
rehab.
stigmatized.
Yeah, for sure. And also, you know, access to care has changed so much as far as commercial insurance too, and how you pay for care. There's a perception that rehab is somewhere that celebrities go or wealthy entertainers go. What's really exciting with the Mental Health Parity Act and the Affordable Care Act is that most commercial insurance today pays for people to go to residential care. So does Medicaid, actually. So
Yep.
access to care has changed dramatically in the past few years, in the past decade. And unfortunately, there's a lot of misunderstanding about that in the marketplace.
Yeah, no, I can absolutely agree with that. And this is kind of a little bit, we mentioned this part a while back, but I just wanted to bring it back up. You said that there's just all kinds of different cares that someone can access via recovery.com. So you'd mentioned, sober livings, IOPs, PHP, RTCs. What about harm reduction type things? Do you guys have any MAT doctors or
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
okay, that's
Absolutely. Yep.
awesome.
We are the proponents of harm reduction. And we've got several providers that specialize in Medicaid assisted treatment. Um, and you can find them on our platform. Absolutely. So
That is
we
phenomenal.
support multiple pathways to recovery. Chris, I personally, I use the 12-step program as a real core piece of my recovery. I go to meetings. I've grown to love going to meetings. I
Yeah.
love the fellowship that comes with that. I sponsor people, but I also kind of cherry pick some other things as well, right? As you know, this 12 steps, it's a spiritual program. Um, and I can supplement that with different things. So
Yeah.
we just want to see people living better lives. And any way you can do that, in my mind, that's what harm reduction is.
100%.
Right? That's it. And frankly, I don't understand why people would be opposed to harm reduction measures.
Yeah, and that's something that I've struggled with for a while now with, and I don't want this to sound like I'm talking bad or down on anything, but there's recovery SAMHSA. So SAMHSA, the government agency that oversees substance use and mental health, defines recovery as a process through which an individual betters their life and well-being. So the government agency that states what recovery is pretty much, I mean, it doesn't say it blatantly, but you don't have a needle in your arm anymore, you're taking Suboxone, you're in recovery.
Mhm.
Yet there are recovery programs that don't believe that. So I find it awesome that you guys don't pinpoint or tie yourself to one recovery pathway and you have multiple avenues because it's never a one size fits all. What works for me isn't going to work for you. And that's exactly what happened with my 12 step program. I went through it. I, did an RTC 12 step, got clean, but it didn't vibe with me all the way, for lack of better words. So what I did is I took pieces from it that worked for me. I took pieces from Smart Recovery that worked for me, and I created my own pathway.
Yeah, that's awesome. That and congratulations again on both your recovery and for figuring out what works for you, right? We're all unique individuals. We're all multifaceted, and I think the days of mandating this is how it works, right? And I also think that the co-founders of AA would support multiple pathways. Those guys were so open-minded and they encouraged us to be open-minded. So I think as long as people are moving in the right direction, they're causing less harm to themselves, their loved ones in society, I think we're all winning.
I agree 100%. I can't, there's not a number that can prove I agree with it more than 100%. But if there was, I'd be saying it because I feel that wholeheartedly. Because I did mat for a little bit. That was one of my ways of staying clean. I did mat for a little bit and I was looked down upon because I was not completely clean.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nice to see a company such as recovery.com supporting various recovery pathways and not just tying themselves to one. I think that's awesome.
Well, Chris, I would imagine that the people who were looking down on you, um, probably number one, weren't the most compassionate people. Number two, right, they probably had very little lived experience, right? So I try earnestly to be a listener, to be a learner, and to be open-minded. Um, but when someone is opposed to something like that, I really want to understand why.
Yeah,
Like, please help me understand why you think this way. And I think, unfortunately, Chris, for us, right, it comes back to stigma,
yeah,
right? It comes back to stigma
agreed.
and people who are going to judge us and our morality and our willpower and our faith and any and all of those things. And, one of the things I've done, Chris, in recovery, one of the things I realized was I absolutely had been a people pleaser. Have you heard that term?
Yep,
Right?
same me
Yeah,
exactly.
and there's so many of us in high empathy, right? And we want peace and we want serenity and we want to help to create that. And then it's really ironic that we end up creating chaos. Um, so it's hard for people like us to not be influenced by others' opinions, right? And for us
Agreed.
not to feel bad, right, that someone thinks this way. Um, I know one thing that's helped me a ton is letting go, right? And just letting go of many things and other people and their thoughts. And it's uh, not dismissive, right? Not saying I'm
Yep,
not listening, but just saying that, oh, okay, that's something that someone else thinks, right? Comes back to the serenity prayer a lot, right?
yes,
Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. There's a
100%.
long list there of things I cannot change, right?
Yeah,
Courage to change the things we can and the wisdom to know the difference. It is amazing, though, how often people have one opinion about this thing and it changes pretty dramatically once it hits home,
yeah, oh yeah,
right?
for sure. They have a
Right. Like
loved one on mat. They took it's completely acceptable now.
100%. Yeah. I've got a very good friend who's a father. And by nature, right, he had been historically very conservative politically, right?
Hmm.
He leans right, a very successful businessman. And lo and behold, he had a teenage daughter who was gay. And she came out and watching him manage that and deal with that and evolve through that was really interesting. And the outcome was beautiful that he completely changed his outlook on that, right?
Yep.
And he became very open-minded and tolerant and accepting. Now, the conversation there was, why did that take your daughter for you to look at this topic that way? Why not if it was your neighbor's daughter? Why not if it was just some other human being that you don't know. And you see the judgment, right? You see the cruelty. I think what it comes down to, Chris, is how humanistic are we,
Yes.
right? And I remember this was another gift of recovery. I remember when I was a really young person, just and I think I would hit the cortical lottery with being an optimist. Like I've always been a positive, happy person until things got really dark with my alcoholism. But I can remember as a kid truly feeling like every other kid that I met was like my brother or my sister.
Hmm.
And do you ever watch children and how quickly they become fast friends?
Yes.
I
Like
think
it's
that's
almost
our
instantly.
what right? So isn't that our natural wiring?
Yes, for
That we
sure it
are
is.
all the same. We are all one tribe. We are all connected. We're all here. We all have the same aspirations, right? Like we really are one big tribe. I think we're taught to think differently,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Us and them, and there's no shortage of divisiveness right now. So um, I don't know, man. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could move more in that direction?
Oh, I agree. It's I don't want to say it's all. So I'm a sociology major and I love these kind of talks. So social institutions kind of implement what our perspective is going to be. And then it's our job to take a look at that perspective and see if I want to inherit it fully or adopt it fully, or do I want to pick my own perspective on things. And that's where I think some people kind of waver, is they just take the inherited perspective and they run with it no matter which way it goes, and that's completely fine. But I do believe that social institutions do need to do better of a job of not force feeding a perspective, but to deliver various perspectives.
There are such, yeah, and I was a psychology major, and I went back and studied positive psychology in graduate school. Psychology and sociology very connected, obviously, right? Like just a I love understanding human behavior or trying to understand human
Oh,
behavior
I
both
think it's the most
individually
fascinating thing.
and in groups. Yeah, it sure is. Um, so how much do we conform? How willing are we to challenge established norms and institutions? These things fluctuate dramatically culturally as well.
Very true.
Do you remember Hofstede's study of cultural dimensions? How if you take people from Scandinavia or the United States or Japan in these different cultures, they look at things very differently,
Yep.
right? Like comfort
Different
level with
lenses.
uncertainty, right? Willingness to challenge authority. So, Chris, you strike me as someone that is comfortable challenging and being a nonconformist. Is that accurate?
100%
Yeah,
correct.
yeah, yeah.
That
Who
was spot on.
is that natural for you? Did your parents instill that in you? How did you become that way?
It's a good question. I think I cherry picked a little bit from my father, but for the most part, I think I created that all on my own.
Yeah.
I think I made that perspective through seeing my dad's perspective, my mom's, my brother's, and then I just made my own. At least I think that's how it is, because I don't think my dad was quite like that.
Well, it's interesting, right? Like, how much are we willing to challenge the norms that we're born into? Um, it, it, so, my personal thought on this is that the reasons why we don't are fear based, right?
Yeah,
Why do people conform, right?
yeah.
Like,
I mean,
I
fear
think it's
based, especially if
easier.
you're a people pleaser
Yeah,
too.
100%, right? I think it's easier. So, arguably, the biggest innate fear that we have is banishment,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, I
We are
agree.
a social species. So if that is lingering somewhere that like I might get kicked out of the clan, right? Look at how gangs initiate young kids.
Yeah,
Like the
that is true.
great lengths that people will go to belong to
To be a
something.
part of something.
That's right. And they're preying on the weakest, right? Usually preying on people that don't have that clan, that tribe at home.
Hmm.
But boy, I can be a part of something. right?
Yeah,
So
that's
you
true.
have to go through these rituals to be a part of it. And then there are rules that we don't violate for fear of what? Being banished.
And yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's human nature to want to hold on to something or be a part of something, whether that be religion, whether it be the 12 step or smart recovery program. It's human nature to want to be involved and hold on to something like that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Keep coming back. Works if you work it.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly right there. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, I love the way you just put that. That was very well worded.
Yeah. Well, I can remember, the first time, it's amazing how different I look at going to a 12-step meeting today than when I first started going into those rooms. I don't know. I don't even know what year the first time I went into a room was, maybe 8 years ago. So I just picked up a 5-year chip a few weeks ago. So my progression was late. I drank from age 13 to age 47. Um, and one of the guys in my home group, he always reinforces this. No one got here on a winning streak, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that is true.
like,
I like that.
yeah, yeah. And I can remember walking into that room the first time and just feeling like, man, how did I get here? I don't belong here. And also, Chris, with rigorous honesty, it really bums me out. I was judging those other people,
Yep.
right?
I did the same. I did the same 100%.
Yeah. And now I can't wait to go to a meeting, and I feel like, so in the big book, they talk about the untreated symptoms of alcoholism were restless, irritable, and discontent. Sometimes we can feel that way if we haven't had our medicine, whatever that might be, right?
Yeah.
Exercise, nature, connection, a meeting.
12
And
step. Yeah.
I think we can feel that, I think in a way that is similar to when we used to want to drink.
Yeah, it does. It kind of fills a void that was taken away.
Yeah. Yeah. Or in the other, using community, a fix, right?
Wow, you got me thinking in a whole different, not that I was thinking in a different direction, but you have me thinking deeper into that. That's true. You're literally trading something for something that makes you feel better and you're
That
filling that void.
that's it. Yeah, that term, I've never really thought about that, right? And we don't talk about that for drinkers. I need a fix. It's the same thing though.
Yeah,
Like
it
why
is.
are you taking that drink? I want to feel different.
Yep.
I'm
I don't
seeking
want to
relief,
feel me. I don't want to
right?
feel like me right now.
You think for you, was it an escape?
Yeah, so I will say, and I was about to ask you this, if you don't mind answering, you don't have to, but I'll not that I've always said this, but I've seen this is that trauma causes addiction. One way or another, trauma is has a hand in someone's addiction. And mine was an escape to not think about my father passing away. And then when
Yeah.
he passed away, it just helped me, it kept me numb, is what it did. So yeah, it was very much so.
Yeah, not no. Everything is open here, man. So did you want to ask about why I drank?
Yeah, if you don't mind me asking, did you have some sort of trauma
Yeah,
or
no, for sure. So
avoidance?
I think I check all the boxes. I was born into a very heavy drinking culture. My dad is one of nine from South Boston, working class Irish Catholic, right?
Wow,
Like very heavy drinking culture, um, where it was part of celebrating, and it was everywhere, right?
very
And
common.
and then my friends that I grew up with, we started drinking regularly in junior high school, and we enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, but looking back, why I enjoyed it was because when I drank, and I liked it from day one, and I drank excessively from day one. I blacked out when I was 13 years old.
Man, you hit the
And
gas pedal and kept it going, huh?
yeah, that's it, right? And I didn't have that shut off mechanism. Um, but for me, I think looking back, I had a lot of fear, and I had a lot of fear about, am I going to be good enough? Am I going to be tough enough? In that culture, toughness was really valued. right? And I was a timid little kid. My dad was a All-American college football player and the New England heavyweight boxing champion. So I had
Jeez.
this kind of legendary father that I
Yeah.
heard about a lot, and he was a wonderful guy. But I think part of it also was, like, man, I can't be like him, right? And I think I felt pressure until alcohol was in me, and then I didn't, right? So it absolutely was an escape. And interestingly enough, my dad died in 2004. It's
Sorry.
not for me to say that my dad died because of his behaviors, right? Alcoholism is a self-diagnosis. I will say he was 55 years old
Oh,
and he
wow.
died suddenly. My personal opinion is that he wouldn't have died then if he didn't have the behaviors that he did. But it's weird. My drinking changed dramatically when he died,
Increased?
and I mourned him, and almost in a sick way, Chris, gave myself a license to drink differently.
Yes.
Does that
Yep.
make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. That's kind of what I was thinking too. Like, hey, this is getting me through this pain. Like,
That's right.
I have a reason to do this.
Yeah, I can justify taking this drink at this time because of this.
Yep.
And I can drink by myself now because of this. And rationalizing our using behaviors, right?
Yeah.
That's what we do. And we convince ourselves that we, weave this narrative that this is okay because,
Yeah. And that there's nothing wrong with it. And I'm not addicted. I can quit whenever I want.
right.
And that's exactly what I thought. I would sit in my truck and just to kind of give a little more insight, I had a OUD, opiate use disorder, OUD. So, I would sit in my truck after going to the dope man's house at 6 in the morning, leaving my wife at the house because I was already in withdrawals. So I'd sit there in my truck and just cry that I had to do this. But after I did it, it was like, okay, this is why I'm doing it. So I don't have to think about that. So I don't
Yeah.
have to think about this. And, the way we left each other was very hard for me. Um, I was supposed to be, it was Thanksgiving night, 2017. I was living in Austin. I was supposed to be heading to the Valley to see my dad and kind of just hang out with him for a little bit for Thanksgiving. My addict brain said, I'm going to go the next day because I need to make sure I have enough with me so I don't go through withdrawals. I got a call about 3 hours later from my uncle saying my dad had passed.
Mm.
And it really, excuse me, but fucked me up. Like that was my tipping point into just a straight free fall of justifying it and doing it. And luckily I did find help, but it's kind of how it goes sometimes. You got to justify it. Not that you have to, but you do justify it.
Yeah, that's hard, Chris. Yeah, it's understandable, right? There was probably some self-loathing with that, right? And tremendous scrutiny of your decisions. Um, I'm glad you're here, man. And I'm glad, and maybe, we can choose how we want to see the world. Maybe that was a gift from your dad, right? And that whole thing eventually led you to get into recovery,
Yep.
right? Is your
100%.
dad part of your higher power?
Yes, he actually is. And I do believe that my dad had a hand in keeping me alive because of the amount I was doing. I mean, when I got to treatment, the doctor was like, I don't know how you're alive, but I'm glad you're here. And it didn't really click in my head until I was clean and I really sat back and looked at it like, there's no reason I should be alive except for the fact that my dad probably kept me alive or talked to the big man upstairs and was like, hey, give him another chance, he's got
Mm.
this on the horizon or something. There's got to be a reason why. And I think that the path that I'm going is the reason why. And I believe my dad was giving me a second chance at life to better myself.
I love it, man. Yeah, it makes sense to me, right?
Yeah.
It certainly wasn't your time. And I think there's a plan for you, right? That you didn't know about. I didn't know about. We don't know about, but we're not driving,
Nope. Nope.
right?
Just long for the ride.
Yeah, yeah. Isn't it better that way?
Yeah, 100%. Because when I drove, I was going the wrong damn direction.
100%. Yeah. And that, it's interesting. I grew up with a lot of tough guys, and a lot of them are fake tough guys, right? And there wasn't a lot of space for vulnerability or weakness. And step one, admitted we were powerless. That's
Yep.
hard.
That's the hardest thing to do.
It really is, especially for people that are wired a certain way and people that think that, they're self-made guys, they're tough guys, whatever, they can figure it out, this rugged individualism. And when you finally get the gift of desperation, as my sponsor calls it, and you got to wave the white flag
Yep.
and just, I'm done. And I look, I'm, I've had my ass kicked a bunch in different ways, mostly athletically. Um, and never, never had my ass kicked that thoroughly and soundly. And there was absolutely no doubt that I was defeated. Yet you resist. But the minute you do that real surrender,
Mm-hmm.
isn't it amazing the relief?
Yeah, actually, now that, as soon as you said that, it clicked in my head like just how worn out and tired and just completely beaten up I felt when I finally said, my ex at the time was Jessica, help me.
Yeah,
Because she had been giving me ultimatums left and right, and you're crazy, you're not going to leave me. And I came to her and I said, help me, please. I need help. Finally surrendered.
yeah,
And it was just a release of just thousands of pounds off my shoulder, off the pressure of my head. Like it just, everything felt better because I knew I was going to get better or I was
absolutely.
on my path.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. In the big book, they talk about, it's not uncommon for a sudden and spectacular spiritual experience and an awakening.
Yeah,
Um, and you know, it's awesome. One of my favorite things that I get to be a part of is when you can witness that, when you see the lights come on
absolutely.
for someone,
Yep.
right? And I sponsor some people. I'm working with a couple of guys right now. Um, one guy's about 2 months in,
Oh,
and man,
that's still rough.
he's feeling it, right? And like he's floating, and he's never had this much time. He's never put in the work, and it's just awesome, man. Seeing people just turn their lives around, and I think a lot of people that haven't been a witness and haven't been up close and seen a human transformation like this, they don't understand the severity of the change,
Yeah,
right?
it's a
Like it's a
complete 180.
whole new world, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You're not even the person you were before the addiction. You're a better version of that person.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah,
agree.
we have our own podcast, the recovery.com podcast, and we close every episode, and I'm the co-host uh, fairly often. We close every episode by asking the guests, what does recovery mean to you?
I
And
love
I
it.
was a guest on it, on our own podcast. And I gave it some thought because I knew that was the last question. And I think I said something to the effect of recovery is the gift and the opportunity to become the best possible version of yourself.
I like that one. I mean, that's solid. That's exactly the gift of recovery is literally being able to be born again, except at an older age.
Yeah.
You don't start off at infancy, you start off at the older age, but you can literally reshape your entire life. I
Yep.
love it.
Chris 2.0.
Yeah, exactly. 2
Yeah.
2.0. I love it. Yeah. I mean that man, we could probably I know we're coming up on time. We could go for hours with this conversation and I would love to have you back for a part 2. But before we kind of end the segment, I'm going to open the floor up to you. Is there anything you want the listeners to know? Plug your information, recovery.com, your Instagram handles. How can they find you?
Yeah. No, thanks a lot. So, What I would say, Chris, is, obviously recovery.com has abundant resources. So if you or anyone else is struggling, um, visit the platform, and we can help you or a loved one find the level of care that they need. The other more general message, if any listener is struggling, I think there's this myth, Chris, that, and I shared some content about this recently, you have to hit bottom. Let's
The
change
Jelinek
that
curve.
narrative. You don't. You can just desire to live a better life, and to stop, right? It's bad enough right now. So don't wait for the bottom, because when we do, the bottom can get lower and lower and lower. So if you have any, considerations, thoughts, speculation, etc., that you might be someone that is struggling, find out. Find out. There's abundant resources there, and we should take quicker action. So that's what I would share.
I love that message. I find it to be very true. They always say, so like the Jelinek curve, that's the rock bottom, and then that's when you're on the upswing. But the rock bottom doesn't have to be here. Sorry, you can't see my hand. The rock bottom doesn't have to be here at the bottom, and it doesn't have to be called rock bottom. It could be right here, and it could just be, I don't want to do this anymore because I don't like getting a headache, or I don't like this.
Yeah.
So I like the way you put that, because saying you have to reach rock bottom to make a change, I think that's insane to me.
Yeah.
I love it. I can't wait to have you back on for another
Hey,
episode.
chapter one, my man, for sure. This
Yeah.
has been great. So
Yeah, we'll get Matt on next time. He won't have a meeting, so it'll be an interesting one.
yeah, no, I really, really grateful for the opportunity to be here. Thank you and Matt for doing the work that you're doing. Um, I hope that someone out there learns something or hears something that resonates. And again, Chris, just thanks so much for having me here today.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the mission. As long as we can help at least one person, I'm satisfied. And again, I appreciate you coming on here. I love what recovery.com and yourself are doing. I follow your posts quite often on LinkedIn, so I'll be bothering you there for here on out.
Oh, you're not bothering me at all, man. Thanks so much for the fellowship. Really appreciate it.
Yes, sir. All right, listeners, we'll see you next week. Have a good one.